Hey, sports fans, it's Larry Eater with Run Blog Run. Guess what time it is? It's Athletics Chat number 46 time. Wow! And the charming gentleman you see with his headset on is Stuart Weir. He's in the intellectual capital of the world, the vaccine capital of the world. And did we add something else to it? Oh, the golf capital of the world, Oxford.
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure we can claim the golf capital.
Golf capital?
But hey,
okay.
I am a twice vaccinated man since you last saw me.
Awesome. Well, you know, there's this aura about you, Stuart. That's awesome, my friend. How did you feel after the second shot?
Absolutely fine. I went straight out and played golf.
That's good. That's important. That's important. Well, we have a bevy of topics today.
Yeah.
And let's start with our the GB marathon selections. What do you think there?
Well, we always think that the US selections are a bit unfair because if somebody is the best in the world and they're ill on the day of the trials, they miss out. But it's black and white, so there's no arguments.
Yeah.
We have the situation that of the top three in the women's race, only Stephanie Davis had the Olympic time. And so the two runners who came in after her, Natasha Cochran and Rosie Edwards, didn't have the Olympic qualifying time, and they were not given another opportunity to get it. So therefore the selectors could choose two athletes, and we had three people who had the time, and they chose Jess Piatsky and Steph Twell, and did not choose Charlotte Purdue, who is a 2:25:38 marathon runner. But you know, you could make a case either way, so it was going to be tough on one person. There we have it. I'm writing something for you this week on Stephanie Davis.
Oh, great!
A chance to hear her story. But you know, she is just such an engaging person who ran her first marathon 3 years ago, did 2:40, had no thoughts of ever being an elite runner. Then she did 2:32 the following year and thought, you know, I'm actually not that far outside the Olympic standard. And then she did 2:27 and she was inside it. But I mean, all this time she was just a club runner with no funding, no sponsorship, doing a regular job and running weekends and evenings.
Wow.
And even now, she has got, she works, I think, 3 days a week, and doesn't have a sponsor, and has a little bit of funding from Scotland, but she's not on the British funding system because, of course, no one was added, and in any case, she probably wouldn't quite have qualified anyway until now. So it's just a lovely story about how you can actually make the progression from being a club runner to elite, even if you don't have, Nike or whoever throwing money at you. So it's just a nice human story. And, for somebody who was so excited to have made it, to be going to the Olympics, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So on the men's side, give me it's Caleb Hawkins.
Well, Caleb Hawkins got pre-selected.
Okay.
And I just think it's hilarious. You know what you do when you get pre-selected? Well, you turn up and you run on the trials anyway as a pacemaker.
Yeah.
Because you feel you could do with the race. Yeah. And then the one that everyone loves again is Chris Thompson, because he's 39.
Yeah.
And then Ben Connor. It's interesting that the ages of the six who are going, leaving out Chris Thompson, who's 39, all the others are 28 to 31.
Wow.
So perhaps perhaps we could actually say on the basis of that the optimum age for marathon running is 28 to 31. So if you're younger than that and you're listening to us, watching us, don't worry, the best is yet to come.
I agree. No, it's. I interviewed Chris Thompson over the weekend, and poor Mike Deering, our producer. I thought we were at. I knew we had gone over the 40 minutes. We went to about 70, and Thompson's a good guy, very emotional about his win, and we got to talk to him about. He's had some wonderful coaches, from John Nuttall and Mick Wood to Mark Rowland and Alan Story, and he pays them all a lot of credit, and great stories about him and Mo Farah, and it's just good to see a guy like that getting near the end of his career and using all the things that he learned, and it's kind of neat. And all four of his coaches, I mean, he had some pretty amazing coaches. I mean, Alan's Story is just, he and Roland are pretty amazing. And Mick Wood, I've heard of him before. And John Nuttall, I met in Doha, and I remember John running, and so it was pretty neat.
Just as Stephanie probably thought she was never going to make it, Chris must have had his moments of thinking, well, my best days are past, and then he goes out and qualifies. So good on him.
Yeah, no,
and I'm just going to say, and Steph 12.
Yeah.
Steph 12 went to the Olympics when she was 19, and 12 years later she's going again.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. I think the word I use for her is effervescent. I interviewed her at the Frankfurt Marathon. I think it was in 19, but I'm having a senior moment. I'll have to go back and check. And just charming as ever, very positive, works out with her hubby, and is a quite talented athlete. I mean, I think she's got some real wheels on her. I think she's capable of a 222. I think she's got that kind of endurance and speed. And what's interesting about most of the athletes that made your team is the tidbits I know on their training. There's some people that are very high mileage, but there are some people that are very modest, aka like Steve Jones back in the 70s and 80s, that's 70, 80 miles a week and just crushing it. And so, you kind of figure out the things that work and what don't, and I think that what it tells you, each one of these athletes, when they've succeeded, is they've found a system that works for them. Yeah. And that's the key, so.
And I mean, the other thing that Stephanie said was, it's not just that, but she's actually very good at that because she's a real cross trainer. But she said it's also about finding your distance, because she was an 800 runner at school, and most of her running career, and she has run 5K and 10K, and was good, but not outstanding. And then suddenly she tries, by the time she's run her second marathon, she's suddenly getting up there.
Yeah. No, I think it's good. So our topic 2 today was IOC and political protest at the Olympics. Well, what do you think?
Well, what brought this to my attention was, the IOC has said that they're not going to allow political protests. But interestingly, the US Olympic and Paralympic Association has come out with their statement for the trials. And basically, they have said if it's a racial or social justice demonstration, then it's fine. Yeah. So if you want to kneel on the podium, that's fine. If you want to wear Black Lives Matter or a slogan which talks about justice and equality, that's fine. If you want to um, have a negative slogan, like you're anti something or other, then that's not allowed. So, in a way, I think this puts pressure
Yeah.
on the IOC. I mean, are the IOC really going to ban an athlete who wears Black Lives Matter or who takes a knee on the podium? I
Yeah.
mean, I think if they do, they'll make themselves a laughingstock.
Well, I thought they made themselves a laughingstock back in November when Bach called, when he chastised Seb Coe for giving an award to Tommy Smith, John Carlos, and Mr. Norman, the Australian who passed away. And he called it personal marketing. And just so you know, 4 of my sites on Twitter got banned after that because they said I was making a political statement. I compared Mr. Bach to an earlier IOC president and how he treated Jesse Owens. And it to me, I find the whole categorization of social protests and everything distasteful. I think people should be allowed to say what they want. The beauty of what happened in 1968 was the level of frustration was so terribly high. And in the U.S., we had just lost Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. And they did something, and they paid for it for the next 40 or 50 years. And it doesn't seem like it's that much different. I applaud the USOPC for saying, look, social protest is cool. I don't want it to get where someone says, the election was a hoax or some other weird stuff, because, there's some knuckleheads out there who will do those things. So I get that. And I know there's got to be standards. But it's going to be interesting, and I with you, I agree. I know, Stuart, don't be shocked. I think that this puts terrible pressure on the IOC, and they've got to start figuring it out. If they want young people to embrace the Olympic movement, they've got to understand that young people support Black Lives Matter. They support social justice. They support ecological justice too. The whole idea of that there are big companies that are getting away with poisoning our water and our air, and that some governments just say, "Hey, man," So that's going to be very interesting. Point 3: shoes break another world record. This is going to be an interesting one today.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have. Don't you sometimes wish that people who break world records had names that were easier to pronounce?
Yes.
Ruth
Chepngetich.
Chepngetich, thank you. Okay. Has just run a half marathon in 1:04:02.
Yes.
She is now the first person since Greta Weitz to hold the world marathon title and the world half marathon title at the same time.
Yeah.
But sadly, and I mean, look, it was a good field. She had Bridget Kosgei, Helen O'Beary, a few others like that. So it was a great achievement. But sadly, in this day and age, people are saying shoes.
Yeah. And the shoes do add to it.
And then, of course, we had the one with Beth Potter.
Yeah.
Who set a world record 5K on the road of 14:41. And now this led to a Times journalist tweeting, Beth Potter has a PR of 4:18 for 1500, 15:28 for 5,000. So it makes perfect sense she can break a world record for 5K on the road. But what happened next was that Beth Potter replied, saying, the next time you want to slag me off, please tag me so that I can see what you're saying.
Yeah.
And then, bless him, Tom Bosworth came in and defended her, saying, so you make the point about technology rather than your desperate attempt to dig at someone's performance with your amateur, pathetic, passive-aggressive tweet. Just because you have a following on social media doesn't make anything right. This isn't journalism. And then there was a response to that. But you know, just as a quick aside, I did an interview with an Irish rugby captain.
Okay.
And 2 weeks ago, he said to me, you know, my entire career, only once has someone come up to me in a bar and said something rude to my face. But 100 times people have written stuff about me on social media.
Yeah.
And it is this social media phenomenon that, see, I would never say to you, Larry, you're an absolute idiot, you're stupid, you write lies. But I can put that on social media and hide behind it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I think this is the challenge.
Yeah.
And I think that Beth Potter, who ran as fast as she could wearing the shoes that are legal, deserves better.
Yeah. No, I do too. I mean, it's there's several topics. Let's start from the top. Social media. Social media is like that story in the Old Testament about the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, where it has great potential, but also for good, but also great potential for evil. We've seen the great potential for good, raising money for people who need help. We've seen it for evil, or less than good, perhaps we should say, in various political situations that have happened around the world. And my biggest complaint always was people seem to think when they're anonymous, they can be total jerks. And the problem is it still comes back to one of us talking to someone else, and be nice to people or be constructive. If Mr. Lawton, the gentleman from the British paper, he could have mentioned Beth and he could have said, look, you know, she ran fast, but I question the use of the shoes, and have a discussion. Do the shoes matter? Yes. I will go on the record and say that they matter, but they still matter less. And I want the discussion about when we went from grass and dirt tracks to an artificial surface. Just compare the percentage of change from Ron Clark's 2811 on a grass track to his 2739 in Turku on an artificial surface. What's the difference there? Joseph Cheptegei, what did he improve? 6 to 8 seconds and 2 seconds and a 5, 6 to 8 and a 10? Yes, they're big, and yes, we're getting more records. And that is making me question, and do the shoes help? Yes, and I think they perhaps help too much, but it's a combination of things. And the idea that it's very... it's not telling the whole story when you say it's all about the shoes. And too many in the media right now have said, God, the shoes are really taking too much away from the athletes. Well, then say that. But how I think it's really wrong to say that an athlete who spent the last 15 months training because they couldn't race and are in phenomenal shape and are frustrated for not making an Olympics aren't going to run really, really well. 14:41, so she ran 4:18 in 15:28. But since then, she has won the international short triathlon circuit, I believe. She's in the shape of her life. And she was training when she won the British Championships in 17. So 4 years later, she's faster. Oh gosh, come on. If she'd run 14:20, then we could talk about it. 14:41, yeah, that's all within the realm.
Yeah. But I was just thinking about the old movie Chariots of Fire on the 24 Olympics, and there are two things in that I was just thinking of.
Mm-hmm.
There was Harold Abraham, who was a really wicked man because he had a coach. I mean, can you imagine having a coach?
My
and
gosh.
of course, the coach wasn't allowed to go anywhere near the Olympic Stadium because that was giving him an advantage. And then there was another athlete who appeared in the film who said, I've heard that some of my opponents are training.
Yes.
They're training. They're practicing. And really, it should be about natural talent.
Yeah.
And we laugh about this now.
Yeah.
But isn't this it's just progress all the time? And perhaps the issue that we're wrong about is attempting to say, is Sepp Coe or Timothy Cheruiyot the better 1500 runner?
Yeah.
How can you make the comparison? And the times that people are running are always going to get better because of advances in medical science, in biomechanics, in training, in shoes, in tracks, in everything.
Yeah.
So perhaps we just need to move away from saying that the time somebody is running this year compared to 5 years ago, just forget that and move on.
Yeah, no, I recall in 1980, I ran in the 32-minute range on the track for a 10K in a pair of Adidas shoes. And then a year and a half later in the Nike Air Mariah on the roads on a certified course, I took about a minute off that time. And at the time, they were talking about how these shoes were perfectly tuned to run 5-minute pace. And I felt like I was on pillows. It was the most amazing thing. So when I ask people about it now, how they feel, they say, oh, they feel great. And it seems like it helps me stop fatigue. So I know they help. And I know that we're seeing incredible breakthroughs. But I'm not sure I don't know what World Athletics can do. And, it's a challenge.
I just can't help thinking, Larry, if you had the modern shoes, you'd be doing a 25-minute 10K.
Most definitely, yes. I think if they dropped me from a plane. Yeah, I remember asking a shoe company representative how someone could run a 2-hour marathon, and he looked at me and he said, this was about 3 years ago, and he said, oh, well, if I dropped you off a hill, you could, and he thought he was really funny. But then we see the things that we've seen. So it's very interesting to see. It's also, I like, I think there needs to be rules. I think the World Athletics has got to figure out what rules are important and what are not. I do think that the media has a bee in the bonnet about the shoes that Nike, Adidas, now Asics, and a couple of the others have. And I don't know how they're going to make it better. I just don't know how they're going to make it better right now. It's kind of frustrating. But and how much do you give? I mean, the Ruth Shep-Nagoda, she was in when she set the world record in was it Chicago. She was in a modern racing shoe, but that wasn't the only thing. I mean, she was in tremendous shape, and this 104.02 is is better than most men can do. Just the most elite. I mean, a 104.02 would put her in the top 10 in most half marathons around the world, except just the speediest. And so it's going to be interesting to see where all this goes, you know?
Yeah.
And then your next topic was U.S. Sprints event last weekend.
Well, I think it's great that you put these events on, so that we can continue to wonder which of the Ophelia sisters is the best hurdler.
Yes.
And
I'm glad you like that. Yeah.
I had a little exchange with Tiffany and Cindy this week. I just said to Tiffany, really, you got to stop letting this Semper girl beat you. And she said, "Ha ha, yes, I agree." But it's interesting that to see Cindy. I mean, I'm just thrilled for Cindy because Cindy had such a horrendous injury in 2017 that I genuinely wondered whether she'd ever get back to this level again.
Yeah.
And, you know, for her to pick up a medal in the European indoors and for her to, to run a 13 dead pretty much is great. And, you know, for, Tiffany, older sister, once famously said, "I know it's time to retire if my sister ever beats me." And we do enjoy reminding her of that.
Yes.
But I think she's got over it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting also just seeing that in events like the hurdles, and the same was true of the 400 hurdles, that the times that people are running in, you know, if you just look at the time, the times are actually not that impressive. But of course, you have to remember that most hurdlers didn't run at all last year.
Yeah.
Now I was talking to Wenda Nell in South Africa, and she's run 2 hurdles races in March. And prior to that, her last hurdles race was in August 2019.
Wow.
Because for a lot of people, because of COVID, there simply weren't the races.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember Danielle Williams, who was living with Natoya Gould at the time, said to me, you know, it's okay for Natoya. All she needs is a bit of a road to run around. You know, I need 100 meters straight with hurdles every 10 meters. And it's quite difficult to put these out on the road and run up and down them. So I think for people in those technical events, it's been really hard. You can keep your fitness going, but the actual practice of getting over the hurdles, working on your stride pattern, working on your technique for hurdling has been difficult. And I think it'll take a while for people to get back to the kind of times that we're used to seeing. And we just got to accept that this is an unusual year, just as last year was an unusual year. And probably it won't be until next year. I mean, you were saying that months and months ago. Probably not until next year will we see a normal year with fair competition, with everyone having the same preparation.
Yeah.
And that's before you start talking about shoes.
Yeah, that's true. No, I think that it's I applaud USATF for putting on these sprint meets, and they're going to do a couple distance meets. What I'm disappointed with is I don't understand why USATF couldn't find a way to work with Jesse Williams with Sound Running, the folks at Miles of Trials. There's about another 20 events going on that is getting very limited publicity and very limited promotion and very limited money. And USATF as the guiding light of elite athletics in the U.S., like British athletics is in the UK. I'd like to see a little bit more from them. And I can't tell them how to do it. And I don't know what the situation is. But I do know that USATF seems to be going its own way on all their events. And yes, I understand the sprints and the hurdle events makes total sense. However, the events the events that are really catering to the 800 on up, we've got people who are doing them and doing those events well. Why don't we work with them? and that's my biggest beef,
Mm.
But there could be others, So it's and then we talked about Mr. Loughton. Talk to me about our Tokyo Olympics watch this week. How do you feel about that right now?
Well, our Prime Minister spoke to us today and said that the roadmap that he has outlined is still on track.
Mm-hmm.
He has not committed himself as to when we will be allowed to do non-essential travel. At the moment, you can really only leave the UK for work if it is deemed to be essential. What we are seeing, and I will come to Tokyo in a moment, what we are now beginning to see coming up is the first spectators at sport for months and months.
Okay.
And we're talking about the FA Cup final, which is sort of culturally would be the equivalent of the Super Bowl in May, having potentially 20,000 fans.
Wow.
Which, I mean, 20,000 as opposed to 90,000, but at least that is massive compared to what it was. So that means that for the London Diamond League and the British Championship, there must be a good chance that there will be spectators.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I mean, I think all the indications are that Tokyo is going to go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
They have said no foreign spectators. They've said that VIP guests can come, but they will not be allowed to bring a friend with them. No spouses, no accompanying guests. Athletes will effectively live in the village like a prison. They will be strongly discouraged from leaving it. No one who's accredited, as far as I could see, is allowed to use public transport.
Wow.
Media are supposed to put in a plan where exactly they're going to be on each day. There's questions about how many track and field writers will be able to attend on any given day. Not everyone.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an awful lot of restrictions.
Yeah.
But the indications are that it's going to go ahead. It'll be unlike any Olympics that you or I have experienced previously. But, for athletes, we talked about this before, for athletes in their 30s, who knows what your fitness will be like in 3 years' time.
Yeah, yeah.
So it would be a great shame for somebody at that point in their career where they don't have another Olympics in them, not to have a chance. And of course, no one, as far as we know at this stage, no one will be allowed to have their family there to watch them in their moment of triumph. But that is the situation. I mean, there's all sorts of issues about the travel, because you see, potentially, if I decide to go, potentially, I could find myself on a plane where somebody tests positive and be told to isolate for 10 days and miss most of the games, restricted games at best. And then potentially I could find that our government decides that people coming back from Tokyo are a risk to the country, and you have to isolate on your return.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot of risks involved, but I think the games are going to go ahead. And I mean, we've talked about this before. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility that you and I go to Tokyo and finish out watching them on TV in a hotel room.
Yeah, well, that's my biggest beef right now, and I'm preparing myself to make an alternative arrangement where I sit somewhere and watch the entire thing off the European broadcasting portal, which was fantastic for the European indoors. And as much as I would like to be in Tokyo, and how much I enjoy the Olympic atmosphere. The realism of that is questionable, you know? And I mean, right now, the U.S. Olympic trials, there are 4 different scenarios. One of the scenarios is that Lane County, the group that has control over it, will allow 50 fans in a day in a stadium that can seat 15 to 22,000.
Yeah.
Then one of the other ones is that at the very other end, they go, okay, everything's great. So you can be 50% full, okay, which means they allow 8,000 people in. Well, how are they going to pick those 8,000 people? Because since 1972, the Olympic trials has had somewhere between 16 and 20,000 people each time, each day. I mean, it's hugely popular with Americans because most of them can't go to the Olympics, you know? So it's going to be fascinating. And right now, the over the weekend, the Hayward Field was there was an event there, and I got to watch part of it on Runner Space. I encourage anybody who gets a chance to do the same. It was nicely done, and they managed expectations. On the 24th of April, they have the grand opening of Hayward, and they don't know if they're going to allow fans in. What they allowed in this weekend was, I think each athlete was allowed a coach and an assistant. And there was a rather liberal view of that. But there's still, it wasn't a big crowd or anything like that. So what's going to happen with the Olympic trials, with the biggest chance to promote the sport in the country, you know? And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. And I don't know if, I think that we're just going to have to wait and see, unfortunately. You know? And it's just, you know, so it's going to be interesting. We'll continue to see things broken out over the next few weeks. But Stuart, you've survived Athletics Chat 46 this week. Thank you again, my friend. Now when's your next golf game?
Friday.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we'll want to report on that. I head out to California on Wednesday. I had my one shot 12 days ago, so I'm looking forward to going back out there from the cheese capital. I'm going to be in the prune capital of the world, San Jose, California, and hope to drive down along the coast and see the ocean once again, because I've missed that. But you and I will have great things to talk about next week, my friend. Okay?
Indeed. If you want to send me a gift, I prefer the cheese to the prunes.
Okay, you got it, my friend. No problem. All right, this is Larry Eder, ending Athletics Chat number 46. Stuart Weird's in the intellectual capital of the world, Oxford. I'm presently in the cheese capital, going to the prune capital. And if you like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube. Thanks again. Stay safe. Hey, sports fans. Larry Eder here. This is your favorite program, Athletics Chat. It's number 46, but this is the epilogue. This is where I wax poetically, if you believe that I can do that. And our topics today, well, first of all, you know the drill. It's Stuart Weir in England. He's in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. I'm in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, the cheese capital, soon to be in San Jose, California, which is Silicon Valley, but used to be the prune capital. Okay. So we try to solve most of the problems in the athletics world each week. And some we do better than others. In others, we just people go, yeah, what are these two people doing? So today we talked about the GB marathon selections. And then we talked about the IOC and political protest, and the wonderful topic of shoes breaking another 2 world records. I actually just won because there was no drug testing. The U.S. sprint events last weekend. And so let's go from the top. In the U.S., it's the top 3 that come across the Olympic trials, and you make the team, as long as you have the qualifying marks. In the UK, they had already selected Caleb Hawkins, so it was Ben O'Connor and uh, Chris Thompson, aka Tomo, at the ripe old age of 39, who won the trials. We will have him on Socialing the Distance, and you'll be able to enjoy that shortly. On the women's side, it was Steph Davis who won, Steph Twell who also made the team, and there was one more athlete, and I will have to include her on the next one because I've forgotten at this moment. Steph Twell, there was some controversy because Charlotte Purdue wasn't on the team, but there's always, with the selection thing, there's always arguments about who can do what. So it's a bit of a challenge. But final deep thought about Kew Gardens, a wonderful event. We hope that the Bedfords, David, Jade, and Tom get a chance to do it again. They did a fantastic job. In the IOC is kind of against the wall now because the USOPC came out with guides to political protest. And while they respected protests about social justice and about racial issues, the idea of things that are political, they weren't real fond of. And the IOC has just said, no, all verboten. And I just don't think that's going to fly. And the IOC needs to have an ombudsman. They need someone to call bullshit on them and tell them that if they really want people under the age of 40 to watch the Olympics, they need to allow people to actually communicate and freely say what's on their minds. Right? 3, shoes break another world record. Yes, there was a new world record in the half marathon 104.02 with Rup Chepngetich. There was also a very fast time, but it won't be a world record. Beth Potter, 14:41. Beth was treated pretty poorly by some members of the British media. And I'm not sure if they just didn't know the protocols of social media. If you're talking about an athlete, then give them a chance to respond. And Beth found out that this Mr. Lawton was making a comment. I don't think he meant anything by it. And he does follow drugs and sports and ethics and all those kinds of happy things. But the bottom line is this. These guys don't get past the new running shoes. And the new running shoes, one, need to be controlled because, yes, I think it is out of control. But there's 4 brands now that have shoes that are pretty close. Soon there's going to be 7 brands that do. Now, does that make it all equal? Not sure. World records are made to be broken, but I'm not sure they're made to be broken as quickly as now. But there's several circumstances that are going on now. People have had 15 months of uninterrupted training. Some people have had 15 months of uninterrupted training without drug testing. Some people have had the frustration of not being able to compete in the Olympics last year and wanting to show their stuff. And some people have had 15 months of training without being injured, which is pretty cool for an athlete as well. But I'm going to take you back to the 1960s. I believe it was 1965 when Ron Clark ran a 28:11 on a grass track in Australia, which was then the 2011-2015. And that same summer, he came to Turku, Finland on an artificial track and ran a 27:39.4 world record until 1972. Just sidebar, the way he got that race is he had a promise to run a 3,000 against a fresh Mohammed Gamoudi and a bunch of other real studs the next night. He got his brains hammered to him. But the difference was 28:15, 28:11, 27:39. So 21 seconds plus another, let's see, 21 seconds and plus another almost 30 seconds. That's what artificial tracks did to them. Artificial tracks were even a bigger change than all these shoes. When Cheptegei broke the 5K and 10K records, he did it by a few seconds each time. And he didn't look tired at the end. That's silliness. The guy is in great shape. Do these shoes matter? Yes, they matter a lot. Do we need to control them? World Athletics has got to do a better job of controlling them, or the sport's got to get out of hand. And world records are going to happen every week, and that's just not right. There's something wrong then. So we do have to deal with it. But in social media, track and field has always had some class about talking about people and, hey, we think this performance is better than the other. Name the people, be respectful, okay? They're putting effort into it. It's not just their shoes. It's a very naive way of looking at things to think that only the shoes matter. Do the shoes matter? Yes. But when you have a fit athlete in the shoes, it's pretty impressive. So we'll have to discuss that more. The U.S. sprints, there's some great performances last weekend, and I just got some more performances today with Shawnee Miller-Weibo going 22:03, the world leader. But here's my beef. USATF is doing some great sprint and jump meets, but there are already some really good distance meets that Jesse Williams and the Trials of Mile peeps were putting on too. I'm just curious why USATF isn't working with them. Nothing damning, not trying to have an argument, but why can't we all play well with each other? USATF has about $43 million. These guys are losing their shirts. And so it's not just Paul Doyle that has really good ideas. Paul's got great ideas, but there's some interesting things here too. So I would love to see everybody get together and chat. A meeting of the minds, perhaps. But that will wait till another day. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. This is Athletics Chat 46. If you like us, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you love us, subscribe on YouTube. Again, Athletics Chat 46. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.